You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristodoulou.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristodoulou, and today it is time to start making picks and predictions for week number 3 of the USFL, as I have been doing this season. Today, we will only be covering the first 2 games on Saturday, and then tomorrow I'll break down the games for Sunday. So we're looking at the Birmingham Stallions taking on the New Orleans Breakers, and we also have the Memphis Showboats taking on the Houston Gamblers. So a couple of interesting games, very two opposite sides of the coin, I guess you could say. You have two 2-0 teams battling it out for the South Division, and then you got 2 0-2 teams looking for their very first win of the season, but a bunch of Southern divisional games to kick off the 3rd week in the season. Before we dive in, I'm just going to say, if you see what I'm wearing right now, I just got these in the mail, what was it, yesterday, maybe today? I can't remember exactly, but shout out to the USFL. They did a really good job with their t-shirt selection with the style that I specifically got myself. This is a tri-blend material. If you don't know what that is, it's like a really soft and well-fitted, doesn't really shrink type of material. And it's a Next Level brand t-shirt. That's the actual brand. I'm not just saying they're Next Level. Like, the brand is actually called Next Level. Phenomenal choice. This is a large. I'm about 6 feet, 200 pounds, and this fits beautifully. Nice and snug on the upper body, but loose down below. This is like my ideal style of t-shirt wear. Shout out to the USFL. You guys absolutely nailed it. So if you're looking to grab some of the shirts, look at the tri-blend ones that look like these. Phenomenal. They feel great. Now, with that behind us, let's dive in. We've got 2 games, and like I said, 2 very different games at that. But we're going to start with the game that kicks off week number 3 at 12:30 p.m. from Protective Stadium. It's going to be on the USA Network if you're looking to watch, as the Birmingham Stallions are playing the New Orleans Breakers in Protective Stadium. This is technically a home game for the Breakers, but as it was pretty much all last year, it's a home game for the Birmingham Stallions, and I expect Stallions fans to show out for this game, as the Breakers and the Stallions have a bit of a rivalry going on here right now, obviously in favor of the Stallions to this point, but this is a big game. Both teams are undefeated. The winner claims the South Division. Stallions come in. They are the hottest team in the league at this point here. If you haven't checked out my power rankings, I highly recommend you do that at the end of this video, because I break down where I have all the teams ranked, and I'm sure, to no one's surprise, I have them ranked at number 1. So a little bit of a spoiler alert there. But check out if you want to see where the other 7 teams are ranked there. They've beaten both of their opponents by a combined 57 points. Phenomenal performance on offense. Phenomenal performances on defense. And then you look at the New Orleans Breakers. Not too shabby themselves. Again, 2-0 as well. On top of that, offense has looked really good, especially the passing game being led by McLeod Bethel-Thompson. Very steady hand, very sizzled and grizzled veteran leadership from him. But then you have like the defense that has been a little bit up and down so far this year. They had a really strong week 1 and then a not so great up until the last few minutes of the 4th quarter against the Gamblers last week. So 2 teams in somewhat different places right now, whereas like the Stallions are coming in as like the all-out favorite. You have a team that has been pretty darn good and are certainly no slouches themselves in the New Orleans Breakers. Now, as for what these teams need to do to be successful and come out victorious in this game here, we'll start with the Stallions. As far as defense goes, they need to play some tight coverage against this Breakers offense. They are the number 2 team in the league with about 253 passing yards per game. And again, McLeod Bethel-Thompson, he's a vet. He's been around for a while. He's played in the CFL, the XFL, the NFL. Like, he's been everywhere. And so with that in mind, you want him to be somewhat contained. And I think that if there's a defense that's going to be able to do that, it's going to be the Stallions team. But that's got to be their main focus coming into this one. Couple that with the fact that New Orleans has a very strong ability to get themselves in the end zone. They're averaging about 30 points a game. That's good for 2nd in the league. You got yourselves your hands full going into this matchup here. The one thing I want to make sure that the Stallions do, though, is that they do not forget, or I guess you should say do not do, but make sure you do not forget running back Wes Hills. He was activated last week and completely exploded onto the scene for the New Orleans Breakers here. He torched the Gamblers, averaging 6.11 yards per attempt. He had 3 touchdowns on the day. This is a guy you need to account for. Do not let him fly under the radar. There was kind of a question mark coming into this season as to how the not the Gamblers, I have a lot of teams on my mind right now. The Breakers offense was going to handle the running game. And with West Hill's emergence last week, I think they're going to try to lean into that. Yes, they love to throw the football, but if they can get a more balanced attack, I think West Hills could potentially be that answer. So do not forget about him. Look to make sure you are trying to slow down that running attack. And again, if there's a defense in the league right now that is well suited to do so, it's probably this Birmingham Stallions unit. As for their offense, take advantage of Alex Magoo's mobility. I think that one thing that the Breakers defense has kind of struggled with a little bit here is just the uncertainty of what Kenji Bahar kind of did to them last week. Yes, he didn't have a ton of scrambles. He only had, I think, 1 rush for 9 yards, but his mobility to be able to roll out of the pocket and things like that definitely gave the Breakers a little bit more of an issue than I think that they would like to admit. They weren't necessarily able to bring down Kenji Bahar as often or just get after him as aggressively as they probably wanted to. So lean into his mobility. But on top of that, focus in on the ground game. This passing offense for the Birmingham Stallions has been unbelievable. Don't get me wrong, but the Breakers defense has not been necessarily great at stopping the run this year. And I think with CJ Marable, who's been pretty solid for you, and then the emergence of Zaquandre White last week, especially considering he went 8 carries for 72 yards, focusing on that running attack a little bit more. Keep the defense of the Breakers honest and make sure that, you know, you're trying to play a little bit of a game with them, you know, establish not only Marable, but White as well. Get them both going, see who gets the hot hand, and then roll with them, and that will immediately open things up for an offense that doesn't really necessarily need that help anyways because they've been so good through the air, but you can count on the mobility of Magoo to kind of, again, you're forcing the defense with a strong running game and a quarterback who can threaten you with his legs as well to almost react like a half a second to a second late because there's that uncertainty. Is this play action an actual run? Is this play action going to turn into a quarterback scramble? Rely on the mobility of your quarterback and your strong running game to open things up. In the passing game, you obviously have such a great receiving core, tight ends emerging now. I mean, at this point, there's a lot you can do on offense, but don't overcomplicate it. You know, it's a very simple thing. Your quarterback's mobile, get good ground game going, allow the play action to start threatening things, you know, and Magoo is as athletic as they come, apparently. He's been very good rushing the football this year as well as passing. I really like their chances in this game, but I think it's very simple. Just rely on the mobility of your offense and what you can do on the ground, and I think you should be pretty good in this game. As for the Breakers, how do they come out victorious in a game that feels like they're pretty much the underdog despite the fact that they're coming 2-0 and a lot of people are already counting them out? And that's coming from a Breakers fan. Stallions defense has been pretty unforgiving this year. They've allowed only 10 points. Remember, 2 points last week came off of a safety, so that's not even on the defense. That was on the offense so that those 2 points were allowed. So they've only averaged 5 points allowed per game between the first 2 games this year, technically speaking. On top of that, only 142 yards through the air. This defense has been relentless. If you are the Breakers, there is a slight sign of hope. And I point to the game against the Generals a couple of weeks ago for this one here. The Generals found success running the football. They had 30 attempts for 197 yards, averaging 6.6 yards per carry. Now, you could probably knock out 45 of those yards because it was from DeAndre Johnson, and you're not going to get that from McLeod Bethel-Thompson, obviously. He is not necessarily the fastest and most mobile quarterback in the world. He is a pocket passer to a T. However, like I talked about with West Hill's emergence last week, I think with his ability and obviously having to respect what your offense can do through the air, there is a good shot that he might be able to put up, maybe not necessarily the 3 touchdowns and wild numbers he had last week, but an effective performance nonetheless that can really open things up for your passing game. I understand your strength is the pass, but let's see if West Hills is as good as we saw last week. He looked awesome in his performance. Let's see if we can double down on that. That is probably the biggest thing that I'll be looking for. And if you just want to like minimize what Darius Victor, or not minimize, but like single out what he did specifically in that game when the Generals played them, he had 8 carries for 89 yards. That's 11 yards per carry, a little bit more than that. Good opportunity to count on your run game after so far relying very heavily on your passing attack to get you a couple of victories so far this season. As for the defense, I think things are kind of simple for what you need to do here. Disrupt the offense. You've only forced 3 sacks this season so far. You have got to be better than that, especially against the Birmingham Stallions offense that is just, go, 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 and they can explode on a moment's notice for massive plays. You need to get after them. You're second in the league in interceptions so far this year. Force a mistake from Alex Magoo. And again, you start doing that by getting after the quarterback. So be aggressive in the pass rush. Try to force an interception or 2 here and there and keep yourselves in the game. Do not let the Stallions offense get out of hand. And on top of that, you're going to need to win on 3rd downs. The Birmingham Stallions they're converting on 55% of their 3rd down attempts. That's literally every other 3rd down at this point. That is a phenomenal clip to be at. You got better than a 50-50 odd of converting your 3rd down. If you were the Birmingham Stallions offense right now, you have got to win on 3rd down if you want to take this Stallions team out and become the team in the South Division. Now, as for who I think comes out victorious in this game, I think we're going to see a decent amount of points. While both of these defenses have been pretty good, I think both of the offenses are also equally as good and have a good shot if things start to break open for this game to turn into somewhat of a shootout. Both teams can pass the football really well. They both have proven rushing attacks. Maybe the Breakers a little bit more so than the Stallions. I don't know. Maybe that's just me being a fan of the Breakers saying that. But I think that this game could get a little bit high scoring. As for who I think ends up coming out the victor, though, probably going to lose my fan card for this one here, but I'm going with the Birmingham Stallions. And I have the Stallions winning this game 26-24. My fellow Breakers fans, I'm sorry. I really want to believe in the Breakers, but this Stallions team was a bit of a mismatch for them, the 2 meetings that they had last year. And I just don't know, or excuse me, 3, because they played in the playoffs last year. Yes, they played in the playoffs last year against each other in the 3 games that they played. I just don't know if the Breakers are going to be able to get it done, especially the way the defense looked last week. I'm like horrified of how good the Stallions are right now and just how far ahead they feel of every other team in the league at this very moment. Maybe the Breakers bring them back down to earth, but I'm leaning more towards the Stallions on this one here. So if you got to take my fan card away, I get it. But yeah, the Stallions just look too good right now to be stopped, and I need to see them be stopped before I can believe anyone stops them, if that makes any sense. Moving into the second game, though, we have 2 teams looking for their very first victory of the season as the Memphis Showboats are going up against the Houston Gamblers at 7 p.m. on Saturday, primetime game at Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. This game is going to be aired on Fox in what is another weird scenario where the Houston Gamblers are the home team, but it's in Memphis. It's going to be a Memphis home game despite that fact. The Showboats are coming off of being absolutely decimated by the Stallions and are basically just kind of looking to find themselves in what is an away game. Whereas the Gamblers are coming off kind of a heartbreaking loss to a Breakers team that almost kind of let them just walk away with the victory until a really strong finish defensively late in the game. A couple of back-to-back interceptions sealing the loss for the Gamblers. This is an interesting matchup because I think that there's a good possibility either team could come out victors in this matchup. But as to what I need to see from these teams for them to come out victorious, we'll look at the Showboats first. Offensively, literally doing anything that was not what you did last week, I think is a plus in my eyes. Look at what you did in the second half of week number 1 against the Stars as kind of the blueprint and how you want to attack going against the Gamblers here. Just completely take the tape and whatever you tried doing against the Stallions and just throw it in the garbage. I have a question as to what's going to happen with the quarterback spot here. Brady White has not necessarily looked stellar so far these first couple of weeks, whether that's his fault or what's going on with the scheme and everything in the offense. There's a lot of questions surrounding the Showboats right now. I don't necessarily know what the answer is, but I'm curious. Are we going to see Brady White as quarterback 1? Does Ryan Willis maybe get the start? Or maybe does Cole Kelly make his first appearance? I'm very curious to see what they wind up doing at the quarterback position because I feel like there's a lot up in the air regarding this offense, and I feel like we might see some changes this week. Could change between now and then. Again, it's only Thursday, and, you got a couple of days before we actually have the games kick off and, players get announced for inactives and whatnot. Who knows what the quarterback situation looks like in Memphis, but I'll be curious to see if we see a change. And I think that at this point, maybe give it a try and see. Don't necessarily know if it ends up being a recipe for success, but, maybe try something different and we'll see. As for just something I would like to see them do. Just be steady in your ground attack. Don't put too much pressure on your quarterbacks right now. I think that a sound running game could do this team wonders. And when you look back to week number 1 against the Stars, once they started running the football more and commit a little bit more to that running game, things started to open up and the offense looked a lot better, a lot more coherent and just smooth altogether, and it flowed a lot nicer. So I think just in this game, go in with whatever quarterback it is you decide, hope that they'll play well enough that if they're, somewhat carried by a sound rushing attack, they don't turn the football over, and maybe you find yourself in a position to potentially win this game. As for the defense, I think you really want to go into this game, and again, this is another portion of a team that has not really done too much well. Be aggressive. Try to force Kenji Bahar into mistakes. He has 6 turnovers this season, 5 interceptions. He has a fumble as well. And on top of that, your pass rush, for everything considered, has been really good. This is one of the lone bright spots on this team so far. You have 8 sacks this year. You're tied for first in sacks with the Michigan Panthers right now. So get after Kenji Bahar. Make him uncomfortable. Force him into the mistakes that he's been making. And maybe you find yourself some success against an offense that didn't look necessarily great week 1, but had a really strong game in week number 2. But let's see if you can get some of those turnovers that Kenji Bahar has been throwing up in the air. And on top of that, I kind of mentioned this with the last game as well, but this is another one here. I think the point is fairly important because third down is where a lot of games are won and lost. Try to win on third down in this game as well. If there's one thing you want to really focus on those third down conversions, because the Gamblers are the 3rd best team in the league on third down, converting at about 44% of the time. For the Gamblers side, things that I want to see from them are things that I'm going to be looking for. For the offense, like I mentioned already, Kenji Bahar and his turnovers, you have got to protect the football. 6 so far in the year. That is not good and a not good way to start things off. I would say that if we get the first 3 quarters Kenji Bahar from last week, your offense is cooking. And on top of that, it's not like he's performed fairly well. It's just the back-breaking turnovers. He's averaged 7.4 yards per attempt. So, I mean, there's a lot to like about what Kenji Bahar is doing. It's just that the turnovers are making it really hard to enjoy. As far as the rest of the offense goes, one thing I really want to point out is just protecting Bahar as well. For all the flack you can give him for turnovers, he's been under a lot of pressure. Offensive line needs to do a little bit of a better job protecting him. I think that if you're not allowing the pressure to get to him, and if this is going to be a tall task against a Showboats team that has a pretty solid defensive front, again, they've had 8 sacks in the year. They're tied for first right now. If you can at least protect Bahar a little bit better, I think maybe you get at least 1, maybe 2 less turnovers in this game. I think you can't rule out at least 1 from Bahar, but if things go in your favor and you're doing a good job protecting him, maybe you only see an interception here, or maybe just a rogue fumble there, something like that. But do your best to try to protect Kenji Bahar at all costs. You've allowed 6 sacks so far this season, which is tied for second most. Let's protect the quarterback. And I'm also curious to see, is there any possibility that, the Gamblers get Mark Thompson going? I'm a little bit lost as to what is going on with the situation with Mark Thompson. Does anyone know? I guess that's kind of where I'm at right now. Does anyone know what's going on with Mark Thompson? I'm assuming he's hurt, but I don't necessarily know what he's hurt about. I don't remember reading anything about the injury. Maybe I just missed that. I've got a lot going on in my life, but I don't know why he's not playing. So I'll be curious to see if we actually see Mark Thompson, but the Gamblers offense should definitely consider trying to run the football. Showboats run defense has not been great. They're allowing 133 yards per game on the ground. Run the football. TJ Pledger looked really good last week. Doubled down on it. Maybe we see Mark Thompson this week and you have a really good running back duo. But I would assume that from the Gamblers' perspective, you want to try to focus on running the football. And that, again, kind of takes the pressure off of Bahar. So maybe look to do some of that as well. As for the defensive side, defense has got to, and this is specifically for players in coverage, has got to play tighter in coverage altogether. From the linebackers to the DBs, whoever it is that is dropping back, you've got to play tighter and you've got to be more aggressive at the point of the catch. I feel like it is almost like a guarantee every time you see the quarterback throw the ball against the Gamblers that he's probably going to make a completion, and it doesn't really matter where it is on the field. Currently, right now, the Gamblers defense, and this is worse than the league on both of these numbers here, are allowing 76.7% completion percentage for quarterbacks, and on top of that, have a fat goose egg. Yes, 0 passes defensed on the year credited to them. That's coming straight from the USFL themselves. That is not good. You have got to do something about that. Again, tighter coverage, be more aggressive at the point of catches, and just try to knock the ball loose here or there at least once. Like, somebody get a hand in there and break up a pass. That's all I'm saying. Defense has got to get a little bit more disciplined in coverage. The Showboats offense did show a few signs of life despite how bad they have kind of looked for the last couple of weeks. And that's coming from running back Alex Collins. I think if the Gamblers can hone in on just shutting down what Alex Collins is able to do, you have a really good shot at winning this game. He's pretty much the only real life of the offense there, so that's probably going to be your biggest key to victory, is just shutting down whatever Alex Collins can do, whether it's, devoting an extra guy on him in coverage when he goes out for a pass, or just being aware of where he is at all times is going to be probably the biggest thing for the Gamblers D. But for who I think comes out victorious in this game here, I had a hard time really picking against the team that I did, just because both teams, again, are 0-2, and somebody has to come out victorious. Thankfully, the USFL does not allow ties. Somebody has to come out victorious. And I like the offensive production I've seen from the Gamblers a little bit more than what I've seen from the Showboats. So I think I'm going to go with the Houston Gamblers as the winners in this game here. I think that if you can just protect Kenji Bahar against the pass rush of the Showboats and help him and help alleviate some of maybe the stress that he's feeling on his shoulders by committing to the run a little bit more, because your running game has looked pretty good so far and had a really strong outing last week, you have a really good shot at winning this game. And I have the Gamblers winning this one at a score of 27-20. I think that there's a good chance that this game comes down to about a possession, maybe even a little bit more than that. I don't know what the betting line is on this game here, but I am not really sold on whatever it is the Showboats are trying to do on offense. I will say that the Gamblers defense is not nearly as good of a group as we saw last year, and especially in terms of forcing the ball in the forcing turnovers. That is probably the biggest thing missed from this Gamblers defense this year, is they are just not turning the ball over for their offense. So there is that for the Showboats to kind of feel good about, but I just don't know if I really believe in what's going on over there offensively outside of Alex Collins for me to really buy into the Showboats right now to come out victorious in any game at this point. I picked against them both times so far this year, and I haven't been wrong yet, so we'll kind of wait and see how things shake out, but not looking good for the Showboats in my opinion, and I'm a little bit worried about where this offense is heading at this point in the season. But that is it. Like I said, Birmingham Stallions winning the South Division, the Gamblers managing to get their first win of the season. I would love to hear in the comment section down below who you guys think is winning from these first two games here. And again, we will talk Sunday's games tomorrow. If you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate you for watching. I will see you all next time. Have a good one.